Getting right to it is okay unless you had something else on your
No,
mind.
let's get right to it. I'm sure there'll be things that come up. They typically do.
So, a few months ago, I got a text from a good friend of mine. Shout out to my friend Ed Gabersky, aka Eddie Nebula, who's a local Rochester musician I've known for, oh boy, over 25 years at this point. One of those people you meet where, like, the first word he ever said to me, I felt completely at ease and like an affinity for this guy. But he sent me a text, and I'll read you some of it, and it aligns very much with some thoughts that I've had and that I've been wanting to get your take on. So he says, he's white, by the way. He says, I'm prejudiced against white people who go overboard and try to sound like a black soul singer. That isn't the same as suggesting that you can't have elements of soul or even perform soul music or R&B music if you're white. But you got to know your place. Color inside the lines, and he means musically there. I say this because there's an element of soulfulness that is only found authentically in the voice of a black soul singer, female or male, and it's informed from very genuine places. For example, I like Humble Pie the band, but I like them as a rock band, not as a soul band. I think they make for a great 70s rock band, and I like their songs. He goes on, but there's this is my favorite part. Listening to Steve Marriott from Humble Pie go overboard to be black is like watching Tropic Thunder with Robert Downey Jr. playing a white guy playing a black guy. Even though I love that film,
Go on.
so um, so then he says, now black people have a wide open road to play white-based rock and roll anytime they want because it's their fucking music in the first place. Now, this is not a super woke dude either. It sounds it has that ring, doesn't it? As somebody who's like playing it really not safe, but saying the things. And that got me thinking because I know guitar players like Vernon Reid and Tom Morello, Vernon Reid, Living Colour, Tom Morello, Rage Against the Machine, have like explicitly said before, this is our music. And they're talking about like rock and heavy rock in particular. And I feel like if you want to say rock and roll is black, that's fine. That's true. That's absolutely true. And even to some degree, roots music, like there's black roots in like country and all those other branches. But arena rock, the stuff I grew up listening to, I always felt was white. And should we have a hang up about that? So this is what I want to put. Yes, I want to put this in your lap, and I have much more to say. But I'm once you get out of the rock and roll era, once you get out of like, okay, Elvis co-opted or whatever, or got credit for things that black musicians like Little Richard weren't getting credit for. That's the story, right? That's the narrative, and I'm not disputing that. I don't know enough about that. It seems okay. I can accept that. Once you get into the 70s, though, or even the late 60s into the 70s, I don't think we should have any reservation about saying this is a white American art form. And what's the problem? Why can't we embrace that? So you tell me, James, is that premise even correct? And is my question, what's your answer to my question?
So, is rock music white? My answer, it neither is nor is not. It's a weird question. It's like saying, is spaghetti American? Its origins, not. Its iteration in this country is.
Is pizza American?
Its origins, not. In this country, it is. Is Chinese food
Indian food
Chinese
too.
food?
Indian food too.
American Indian food,
right? I mean, yeah, Indian food served in America. Yes,
served in America. Like, because from what I understand, and you know this better than I, there's a bit of there's a different tweak for the American taste.
Definitely, and there's a lot of regional, and Mexican food is very regional.
That's another great example.
A lot of variation. Yeah.
all of these things neither are nor not. So when it comes to their origins, I mean, rock, you would think, yes. I mean, from what we know, Robert Johnson going back, Devil selling soul at the crossroads, even going back into soul going back into the churches, really. And
Mhm.
and Sacred Steel. I was talking about pedal steel guitar with someone last week. And like there's this long lineage of rock being entangled with Black culture. Its origins are tied with Black culture. Is it solely? No, not solely, even in its origins. But it's an incredibly key part of its larger story. So I think there's an interesting question, and why I thought it got my brain going when you mentioned it was, okay, there's this larger discussion about cultural appropriation over the last, what, 10, 15? Is it longer than that?
In terms of its like percolating at the forefront, I'd say probably a dozen years, maybe a little more. But 2014 to me, 2012, 2014 to me seems right in there somewhere is this turning point where all of a sudden this starts to kind of flood popular discourse. These kinds of this
The
kind of
Jonathan Haidt year.
yeah, this kind of race hyper consciousness or hyper vigilance about race. At least as far as I saw it in my lane
Well,
of
more
music
than that,
journalism.
race, gender, I think culture. I think there's a mix of the Occupy Wall Street and what Jonathan Haidt repeatedly points to is sort of like where you had this generation of kids who are graduating around that era, who went into the workforces, who went into culture, and their expectations were something wholly different.
Yeah, they
That
became an HR nightmare and then they took over HR.
yeah, well, they wanted to nerf the world
Because the world had
because
been nerfed for them and they couldn't cope.
yeah,
This
well,
is Haidt's premise,
totally,
and they couldn't cope
totally.
with opposition and difference. They had been so coddled. Um, and ironically, Gen X parents, I don't think Haidt gets into this too much, or I don't know how much he gets into it, but I know I've observed this, and Megan Daum has brought this up. Gen Xers, my generation, who are like, man, we were left alone and drinking gin and getting high at 13, and my parents didn't know where I was, and I was a latchkey kid, and I'm proud of it. And that generation is like super helicopter parenty. So for whatever that's worth. But yeah, to what you were saying, they wanted to nerf the world and demanded and succeeded in getting the workplace nerfed for
Without
them.
a doubt. And I think what we're seeing with national politics with the Trump administration is sort of a reaction to that, among other things. There's a reaction to a number of things, but I think that's a big undercurrent where it was like, okay, we're not nerfing anymore. At least not nerfing in the that's probably let me rephrase that because I do think there is some nerfing, but it's like we're going to change the things we're going to nerf.
Or fuck you, I won't nerf what you tell me.
Well, yeah, I think, but to get to I fuck you. What you tell me?
You should have called this
Getting,
episode that.
yeah, getting back to your larger point, I think, um, I think in practice, I mean, what post Hendrix? That's the reason why I picked Hendrix as a thumbnail. What I mean, BB King, but BB King's more of a bluesman. I'm
Oh
trying to
yeah.
think of who would be like who would have picked up the baton after Hendrix.
as being the
Tracy
face of
Chapman in there somewhere.
not
I'm trying to think
really.
of.
She's
She was
folk. I mean,
more
she's dope, but
acoustic.
she's yeah. She's not. She's the next Joan Armatrading. She's not the next Jimi Hendrix. And listen, I love Joan Armatrading.
Yeah,
I think Tracy Chapman's super powerful. I'm just saying,
love them.
you're asking who's the face of the black face of rock music.
Yeah, and I think
Vernon Reid is the closest one, I would think.
yeah, Vernon Reid is certainly up there, and then after Vernon, because Vernon is, this is like a 30 years of Vernon. Living Color, for those who don't know.
It's 37
mean,
years. It's 1988. Is that first record, the one that they had the big hit Cult of Personality on, is 1988.
I mean, like just as a young kid, young black kid loving rock, growing up with, Big Brother cranking up rock. When I heard like Seven Dust, I was pumped, but that's not the whole band. Like it's just, they are rare. It's kind of like, actually, I hadn't thought about this till right now. The perfect analog is baseball.
I think I know where you're going with this. I'm excited.
You could argue the greatest baseball players of all time. A lot of people will look at Willie Mays. A lot of people, won't admit Barry Bonds, but Barry Bonds. You look at Ken Griffey Jr. growing up, Ken Griffey Sr. before him, Hank Aaron. The volume of black baseball players was always a high percentage, and then it wasn't.
Wasn't it black dominated in the 70s and 80s, maybe up
Without a doubt.
until the 90s?
Doc Gooden.
You go on and on and on and on.
There was a shift, and I think it was a similar shift to rock music, where there was this sort of, we have this other thing over here, and these other things are more interesting, and these other things are more reflective of us, I'm assuming. That's where my brain goes.